Hello, everyone. My name is Pascale Sablan, and I am really excited to share my story and my journey and a little bit about my advocacy work with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just a little bit. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm Pascale. I'm an associate at IJ Associates in New York City. I am the founder and executive director of Beyond the Built Environment, LLC. I am the NOMA National Historian, as well as the NOMA National President-elect, the fifth woman ever to hold that position of leadership in the organization's 50-year legacy. I'm also the AIA New York Board of Directors and the AIA New York, AIA National Strategic Planning Committee member who helped write the strategic plan that the organization and all its members needs to participate in the next 5 years. And also, I'm also a mom, an architect, and a spouse, and I love advocacy and I love architecture. And part of the reasons why I kind of shared all the different hats that I wear is just to kind of say, these are the organizations and institutions that really has allowed me to connect and pair up with the community that I've been advocating for. So participating in programs, as well as just connecting to local community groups has been amazing and a great experience. So part of that is also kind of understanding that when it comes to architecture, we have a role and responsibility to steward the next generation into this process and into the profession. And one of my favorite programs that I participate in is the Project Pipeline Camp, which is run by NOMA National. And in this camp, we take kids around their communities, show them about architecture, enforce them, empower them with the vernacular about the built environment. And then together we design a project and they present it to one another and their families. And I often wonder what happens to these kids when they continue to go home and to research this profession that we have successfully made them in love with, right? And so like most millennials, I Googled it. And so if you Google the words great architects, Google banner comes up with the top 50 names and faces. And so here are the first 40. As you can see, it really does range from contemporary, currently practicing architects and designers all the way down to Raphael and Michelangelo. So this is a very large breadth of time that's being captured here, right? And in this process, I tried to figure out, well, how many of this 40 are women? 1, Zaha Hadid. Zaha Hadid is the only woman in this entire list. So between now and when Architects with Ninja Turtles, there has only been one woman who significantly contributed to the profession and the built environment? Absolutely not. Now, how many do you think are African American? 0, not a single person. So this became a challenge for me. And so I actually went to the Google headquarters and asked, hey, why is this the result of the search when we look for it, right? And they said, Pascale, really, there's not enough content out there that lists you all as great. So on your screen now is a print screen moment, an opportunity of 40 incredible African-American Black architects who've changed our world and our nation, and names that you should know, whose names should have been written with the word great, but hasn't yet. And that has also kind of given me a mission. Then, thanks to Dr. Adelaide Sanford, she introduced me to a really important character named Albert Shanker. Albert Shanker was the president of the Federation of Teachers from 1964 to 1997. And while listening to her speech about in Afrocentric education as a human rights, she talks about his quest for equity in the public school education system. And this is why he's highly respected and highly regarded, because what he was trying to ensure that regardless of if you're getting your education in New York or in South Carolina or in California, that the education is equitable and consistent. But part of his thought process of how to find that equity was about erasing culture, right? Never let the African-American child learn of his or her history, because if they do, they relate more to their ethnicity and they will not become an American. Now, Dr. Adelaide Sanford's point is that that mindset in terms of the way we are educated has persisted, right? And that we're often taught about people and not really given the opportunity to understand their identities and kind of understanding their cultural backgrounds. And then also with that, assume that all greatness is associated and affiliated with a particular gender and a particular race. So the way I set up this presentation today is to have the black and white pages kind of set up the issue. The yellow pages is how I specifically am trying to address the issue. And then the cyan pages, my favorite color, are ways that I'm still aspiring to make change. And the first lesson in this is to say, you don't have to have it all figured out, all done, ribbon bows and everything celebrated to start sharing. I think it's important that we share our mission, share our work, share our thoughts and ideals, because you never know who in the audience could be there to support you and actually also help in the mission. So the very first thing I did back in January of 2017 was a Say It Loud exhibition that elevated the contributions of minority architects and designers of New York at the Center for Architecture. And the concept was to see our faces, hear our voices, and feel our impact within the colorful tapestry of our heritage. I wanted this exhibition to be bright, vibrant, loud, if you will. And so part of that was to make sure that the thumbnails next to the project labels were not just of our names, but also really huge headshots. And to hear our voices, we had video testimonials set up on either side of the gallery, where you can hear the designers speak about their experiences in the built environment and in the profession. And then lastly, feel our impact within the colorful tapestries of our heritage is through our work, which is the way we want you to see us and evaluate us in the first place. And that's really showcasing all those components together. And so someone from the United Nations so happened to have visited our Say It Loud New York exhibition and invited us to say it loud at the UN. So a little over a year later, we were exhibiting at the United Nations Visitor Center in New York, where they didn't let me be as bright or as vibrant, but I can say very loud, especially with the number and quantities of visitors that come to their center. Was incredible to have that kind of exposure. The world leaders, right? That was in world visitors that were there, delegates and such. But then also they gave me the power of the podium, where they allowed me to speak at the opening of the exhibition. And so I leveraged that opportunity to not just talk about what we had done and thank those who had collaborated with me, but really also took the opportunity to talk about my aspirations here and ask for their support in making this a national movement. And before I got to my seat, they said, Pascale, we're gonna help you make this an international movement. In June of 2018 was AIA's conference in New York. So exciting. I had submitted two panel discussions that I thought could be fun. And part of the pushback, they were both rejected. And part of the pushback was, Pascale, these are too bespoke to a particular demographics or group of people. We want our seminars to be a lot more inclusive so that more people are enticed to participate, which I get. I don't get, but I get. But I heard that no, and I wanted a yes anyway. So the first thing I did is I contacted my office at the time, S9 Architecture, whose office and headquarters was literally 1 block away from the Jacob Javits Center where the conference was being held. So it was like perfect timing to say, hey, can I take over the conference room and the office gallery for between these dates and these dates? And they said, yes, whatever you need, have fun. And then I contacted my resources and my network and asked them to spread the word that we're going to be having these seminars in this space on these times. I also called the United Nations and said, hey, are you guys done with the exhibition boards? Because if so, I have an idea. They said, absolutely, whatever you need, come get them. And then I was able to circle back with AIA and ask them to add the Say It Loud exhibition as part of the app. So those who are on the app can just see that there's an opportunity for them to come and explore and enjoy our exhibition. And they said yes. So I was able to host 2 seminar discussions plus the Say It Loud exhibition 1 block away from the conference. And it was super successful. Lots of people came to visit and lots of people came to see our story and hear it. So I say all this to say a yes can be squeezed out if you push hard enough and find ways to make it happen. So staying true to their word, in March of 2019, technically March 25th, 2019 was Say It Loud Day, United Nations globally, where they translated my exhibition into 8 different languages. So that's how you say it loud in all those languages in the middle of your screen there. And they invited professors and their students to come to the centers to learn about these incredible architects and designers. Now, I cannot begin to express the amount of tears that poured out of my eyes because I had no idea my little Say It Loud in New York was going to have such a global reach. But it's also the moment where I realized, A, the power of the podium, and B, saying that this couldn't be a traveling exhibition. Like, I loved the 22 people that I featured in the very first few exhibitions. They're amazing, they're great, but I wanted to leverage this exhibition style and strategies and initiatives to actually become the catalyst to actually elevate women and BIPOC designers of a particular location. So it's not a traveling exhibition, but a traveling activation. And then a year later, June 2019, guess who got invited to the party? That's right, we did. Say It Loud was prominently featured as part of the exhibition spaces. Beautiful spot right next to the lounge, so everybody got to see it. And even the president of AIA, William Bates, made it a point to come and hang out and say it loud with us. So I say all this to say, pushing and persevering the previous year allowed for more opportunities to be offered the following and really be able to leverage that as much as we can. Also, I think you guys can realize I love to talk, and so I also leverage these requests for me to keynote and to lecture as another opportunity to host a Say It Loud exhibition. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So here in Say It Loud, Virginia, in November of 2019, I was keynoting the Architecture Exchange East Conference, and the year prior was Francis Curie, so, you know, big shoes. So I whipped out my shiny blue suit and was able to speak to the issues that we're thinking about, but also was able to get a Say It Loud exhibition to happen during the conference as well. Also in November of 2019, we had our Say It Loud Pennsylvania. And this was a critical and important one because someone gave me feedback right before and said, hey, Pascale, I thought the whole purpose of all of these Say It Louds is to inspire the kids that come to Project Pipeline and basically greater society to knowing about the profession and the great work that we're doing. But how are they going to reach you at the Center for Architecture or South by Southwest or United Nations? It feels a bit inaccessible, right? And it was the best feedback ever because it really did recenter the purpose of this mission. And I brought that challenge to the NOMA PGH team, who literally showed up and showed out. It was incredible. They picked a venue that was a public access gallery in the essential part of the community. And then they programmed it like you wouldn't believe. Networking events, panel discussions, keynotes, a whole youth day where there was images and videos of kids coming in, playing with Legos, playing with connected toys, creating projects and designs, and then standing next to their favorite project or standing in front of the title wall and talking about how they're going to become a future architect. And so they have set the tone. NOMA PGH have set the tone and the rubric in which all of my exhibitions are now measured against of inventive ways of trying to pull the community in as much as possible. In January of 2020 with Say It Loud, Georgia. Georgia Tech is the very first school of architecture that said yes. They are not the very first school of architecture that I've asked to do an exhibition that's centered and focused on women and BIPOC designers. So I'm incredibly proud and honored that they were the first school of architecture to see value in this. And part of my favorite part of this exhibition really was elevating the identities and the contributions of really great designers of Georgia, and specifically William J. Stanley III and his wife, Ivanhoe Love Stanley, who had designed and constructed part of the campus. And so it was so incredible for the kids to get to see and explore and meet the individuals who literally impact their lives daily. In February of 2020, we had Say It Loud United Kingdom, my first international exhibition. This taught me a lot of things. One, that the systemic issues that we're plagued with here is not exclusive to the United States, that this is really a global issue, and that there are organizations like the RIBA, the Black Females in Architects, and the Stephen Lawrence Architecture Foundation, who are all working really hard to break down those issues as well. And so this really started to allow us or introduce us into a global conversation and also just kind of expanding the network into that capacity. So really excited about Say It Loud UK in February of 2020. In March 13th, actually, of 2020, we had our Say It Loud Ohio exhibition, which we had been planning for 6 months. We had broken all records during this exhibition with 44 submissions, 32 video testimonials. It was insane. We picked a venue following the NOMA PGH kind of lead, the Karamu House Theater, Performing Arts Theater, which is the oldest African-American theater in the country. Which I totally thought was the Apollo was the oldest, but apparently Apollo was whites only for a while. Who knew? Anyway, I was just so excited people were going to go to these plays and shows and come out of there and be able to see all this incredible work on the walls. And 2 hours before the Say It Loud exhibition opened up, the governor got on the screen and said, COVID's crazy. no more gatherings of people, more than 100 people. And so aside from the very brave few that had attended or came to the exhibition a little early, no one got to see our Say It Loud Ohio, which crushed my soul. And so what we ended up trying to do is pivot it, right? How can I move the mission forward, but from my home? And so what we started to do is, in the exhibitions that we're planning on physical exhibitions, we turned them into virtual ones, where we had thumbnails of each of those who are featured. And then when you click on them, you get a full profile page of their work, their headshot, the projects, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was amazing and incredible. And so post kind of being quarantined for a while, October 2021, we came back, and we came back in a big way. We had 6 exhibitions in the month of October. And it also created this new typology, Say It Louder Ohio. So basically we took the original boards and the original videos from the first Say It Loud that nobody got to see, and we're able to ship it and have it travel. And Kent State University was the first school to say, please let us get it. And they featured it in their incredible gallery. And so this is a great idea, because the way we've designed the exhibition is that they're 4x8 boards. So they're not vinyl directly on the walls, which allows for them to be installed and deinstalled pretty seamlessly and shipped all over. So outside of the first exhibition, doing the most of the investment in terms of designing the boards and getting the content and the videos all kind of paid for, once that's set, then it's really a minimal cost and fee of shipping those boards from locations to locations. And they've already planned a 3rd location for Say It Loud Ohio, which is also really exciting. So I say all this to say, when we think about these exhibitions, we can kind of first invest in making it happen, and then be creative about the spaces where these exhibitions can go to. You know, arts and performing centers of your community, a local high school. It doesn't need to be museums and galleries. It literally is wherever the people are. And I'm really excited about the model that Say It Louder Ohio has developed. Also in October, we had the Say It Loud NOMA 50th exhibition. This is our 50th year, and this exhibition really was trying to leverage our history and legacy. So not only did we elevate the work and contributions of 81 NOMA members, but then we also made it a point to talk about the history of NOMA, the mark, the logo, the founders, the presidents, the presidential staff, and really tell the story about Whitney M. Young and how he was catalytic in the founding of the organization. And so this was really powerful, and this is exciting. Are you ready? I started to leverage technology. So what you see on your screen now is a QR code. If you click the code, it should be able to take you straight to the virtual gallery of the exhibition and the People's Choice. And what we're looking to do is, we have this code actually as part of the installation. And so when people enter to the exhibition space, they can actually scan that code and be able to vote on their favorite designer. And in that People's Choice, I'm not only leveraging people who are physically coming to these exhibitions, but I'm also having people who are virtual or out of these areas to be able to explore the exhibition, enjoy it, and be able to participate and expand the elevation of these incredible people. Say It Loud We at Texas, which is our first exhibition that focused on women in architecture. And this was really powerful, and it was part of the Texas Society of Architects, but it was really hosted and spearheaded by the AIA San Antonio Women in Architecture group that really put all of this together, and it was absolutely incredible, and I love it. They even did this double-sided printing, so dope. So this is a really great way of kind of creating that, and they broke another series of records by having over 91 submissions of women from all over Texas participating in this exhibition. Then when that came down out of the conference, because the conference was only up for a few days, we were able to have the Say It Louder We at Texas exhibition, and this one opened at the Center for Architecture in San Antonio. So again, they were able to kind of continue that legacy of the project and of the initiative and getting it out there as much as possible. And so I'm really excited about having this again be part of that process of allowing the Louder series to kind of really cultivate and move the mission forward. And they are also planning another location for the exhibition to be displayed. Stay tuned. Say It Loud Minnesota, also in October of 2021, is at the University of Minnesota. So proud, another School of Architecture and Design who knows what's up. And it's beautifully elevated and displayed at the Goldstein Museum of Design gallery, and I highly recommend if you're in the area that you participate and take a look. It's been great. And they also have a People's Choice Award up. And then we have Say It Loud Maryland and the Center for Architecture. This was a collaboration between Be More NOMA, AIA Baltimore, and the Baltimore Architecture Foundation. And not only are they having these exhibitions, and I believe the very first exhibition is their gallery since it's been constructed, but they're also using it as a catalyst to have really important conversations and panel discussions and events that again try to activate and pull the community in as much as possible. And I'm pretty sure earlier this week they had this whole thing with the mayors and governors and councilmen and assembly people of their community to come in and talk about the issues that are plaguing the built environment. So really proud of how this exhibition has become catalytic in that way. And so what's my future aspirations? My future aspirations is a few things. First, I want to make sure that I find a Lego exec. I love this whole architecture series, so dope, but I'm really going to need some of the projects to be designed by women and people of color. So if there's anybody out there, please let me know. Would love to have this conversation. And also leveraging the fact that I read great books to my kids every night. My kid every night. I've learned that books is a great way of planting seeds of inspiration and ideas. And so I've been working with an artist called Naturel, who creates caricatures of the designers that have been featured in the Say It Loud, and working with a pop-up artist to create pop-up art of that architecture work. And the words, I can too, so that the kids can practice affirmations that they too can become an architect, they too can change the world. And again, we're just leveraging the content that we're collecting from all of these Say It Loud exhibitions. And so the namesake of this presentation is I was asked to stand and having something to prove. And that's rooted in this experience that I had while I was studying architecture at Pratt Institute. In my second week of school, a professor asked me and another student to stand and said, okay, these two will never become architects because they're Black and because they're women. I was shocked that a professor would make such a strong proclamation without ever knowing my name nor my capacity. I was floored that there was only two of us in this entire room of 60 plus kids that complied with that statistic or that thought process. And then also the silence of my peers, right? And so this is the moment that I feel that I really understood that when I enter a space, I would never be representing Pascale, but I would be representing my gender and race. And so therefore I had this enormous responsibility to always be the best that I can, because I didn't want my performance to be the reason why somebody else didn't get an opportunity following me. And it's also the moment where I recognized that I could no longer just enter the profession and worry about the built environment and the products that I design and construct, but also created the sense of responsibility for addressing the profession itself and how it functions. And so when I share this story, I get a lot of like gasps and people can't believe it, but I typically ask the audience to stand if they've ever been told that they're inadequate because of their gender and or race. And people are standing in schools of architecture and people are standing in professional settings. And I say this to say that it didn't just happen to me, and it doesn't just happen to me, and it's still happening. And it's part of the system that's withholding great and brilliant minds and talent and cultural variety from coming into the profession, because that's part of the system. And so I urge schools of design, schools of architecture to really start to think about processes for students to report these kind of statements and sentiments, as well as a level of accountability and a policy of how it will be handled. Because let's be clear, as we try to inspire these small little minds and get them still excited about architecture all through elementary school, get them through high school, still loving architecture, applying to college and get them there, imagine to get there and be told you don't belong. So we just did a whole pipeline of 10 years of trying to get somebody here, and in one sentence or one semester with the wrong professor can pull someone out. And so we really need to be mindful and protect those students who come in who are looking to do architecture and design. And so why was my professor so adamant and so kind of confident in these statements, right? Because it wasn't from a place of anger or whatever. And it's to think about what he knows, right? According to NAB 2019 report, the total number of Black architecture students has remained at 5% for over a decade. 5%. And 5% apply, 5% get enrolled, but only 3% graduate. So I often think about and wonder what happened to that missing 2%. Demographics of professors, 34% are licensed, 2.5% are Black, 68% are women, 32% are women. So I'm not saying that I can only learn from women or people of color, absolutely not. What I am saying is that as important as it is for me to see someone who looks like me in a place of authority, in a place of education, it is also equally important for my peers to see that as well, right? And then trying to keep things accountable. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? And so Bradford C. Grant and Dennis Mann started the Directory of African American Architects. And it's incredible because it's basically tracking the currently living and practicing African American architects of the US. And what's been interesting in this process is in January of 2020, the University of Cincinnati said they no longer think that this is an important resource and that they were no longer going to fund it. And that required a lot of conversations and calls and trying to get different institutions to take it over. And so I'm very proud of NOMA National for stepping forward and taking over the site. So there at the center of your screen is the new website for it. So if you are a registered Black architect in the US and you haven't submitted your own name for the directory, I highly recommend that you do so. We have a NOMA 2030 challenge where we're really trying to double the number of architects of color that are Black, in the US by the year 2030. So 5,000, and we are far away from that. We would require 26 new Black licensed architects per month to get there between now and then. And we're kind of getting more around like 2 or 3 per month. So really, it requires a long and investive kind of support system of getting that happening. I try to tell our story. So I participate in lecture in colleges, universities, conferences, if you will. But then also as the NOMA historian, I launched the NOMA Vimeo page. And in this page, I've basically pulled lectures, seminars, testimonials, videos, project pipeline camps, and put them on a platform where you can hear Black voices talk about stories other than Jedi stuff. I mean, we could talk about Jedi, we're amazing at it, clearly, but we could talk about projects, master planning, spatial environment, and all that other components, and this is a great resource. So if schools of architecture or your local kind of architecture groups don't have a diverse range of speakers, this is an incredible opportunity and a resource for you as well. It's constantly growing, and it was listed at the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History and Culture's website as an important resource, so that has been incredible, and so excited that we're almost at 40,000 views of people looking and exploring our content. I also wanted to make sure things were full circle. So when I was president of the New York chapter of NOMA, I was able to go back to Pratt and say, I've loved my education here. I love my time here. I love my network here, but we need to repair a wrong that was made. And together we created the Young Designers Conference, where we invited 58 students and 25 speakers to talk about architecture design, and even do a high school and college student design competition. And the really important moment of that is to show college kids that even at that point, they were already in a position to mentor, that having conversations with these high school kids about architecture, about the schools that they're applying to and that their experiences was very relevant and really important, probably more so than talking to me, graduated 1,000 years ago, right? And so leveraging that and using that in that process. I'm also leveraging social media, social change. And with that, we launched the Beyond the Built IG takeover page in December of 2018. Every week, a different diverse designer takes it over, talks about their work, their strategies, their journey, to A, create a community of people who care to hear our stories and the work that we're doing, B, to flex that muscle of sharing your stories, of finding those images and claiming your contributions, and C, becoming this incredible resource that's always there, constantly growing and building. So we've featured over 152 designers, and we're almost at 8,000 followers. So if you're not following Beyond the Built with a T on IG, I highly recommend and encourage you to do so. Then we have featured over 26 Say It Loud exhibitions, and another 3 planned for early next year, so I'm super excited. And so what I did was take all this content from all these exhibitions and created the Great Diverse Designers Library. Google said, there's not enough content that calls us great. Well, here we are. I'm calling all of us great that's in this library. And it's sequenced both by alphabetical order and by last name. And when you click the person's name, it takes you to their profile page. And so as of this moment, we're at 669 profiles, and I cannot wait to hit 700 and go beyond. So every time we do a new Say It Loud exhibition and we break more records in terms of those who are applying, that constantly grows this resource that, again, is completely free, a resource for students, professors, professionals, potential clients, developers, publications, reporters, journalists. This is all for you, for us to leverage and learn and to leverage. Excuse me. And so what you see here on the screen is kind of the evolution of the website, if you will. On the left-hand side, whenever I had a Say It Loud exhibition, you basically would go on the website and see these beautiful pictures with a wish you were there kind of moment, right? After COVID and going into quarantine and lockdown and kind of transitioning and creating the new exhibitions that is virtual, I also made it my business to convert all of my past exhibitions into virtual exhibitions as well. And so now not only do you see the pictures of the exhibitions, but you also get the thumbnails of all those who were featured. You get to click their names and faces, and it takes you to their profile page in the Great Diverse Designers Library. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen are all the Say It Loud exhibitions we've had so far, and the ones with the 2 next to it are the ones that had the Say It Louder kind of experience. And my goal ultimately is to publish a Great Diverse Designers book, name still kind of being figured out. But what I wanted to show you is that I always wait for me to be invited to participate and do a Say It Loud exhibition. And on the left-hand side of your screen in 2019, you can see there was a distinct part of this country that I was just never invited to participate in, as well as it kept me really local to the US. And, you know, I had a connection there with the UK, but really it kept things really centric. So in 2020, I made it my business to really aggressively engage, reach out, and create platforms and methods and ways of creating opportunities to expand in that network, both nationally and globally. And so on the right-hand side of your screen, there are all the places in orange that are now represented in that Great Diverse Designers Library. And I'm hoping to leverage all that content as the basis for the information that will be featured in the book that we can use in academia, in a professional setting, and for the world. Our ancestors are our heroes, and our ancestors are our heroes, and we are their legacy. So why are we not following their footsteps, right? According to NAB's report, it can take 11 to 12 and a half years to become a registered licensed architect. That's me at the bottom. It took me 13 years. I got my 5-year degree at Pratt for my 5-year bachelor's degree. I got my 1-year master's at Columbia for advanced architectural design. I knocked out my IDP. I wasn't playing. My mentor wasn't playing. We were very strategic, put me on projects and helped me get those hours that I needed. And I think IDP is now AXP now. I don't know, different acronyms. I'm old. But the ARE exams took me forever. It took me 4 years, and not 4 years once in a while. 4 years of nonstop studying and test taking. It took me 14 tests before I passed the 7 that was required. Some exams I passed at the first time. Some it took 3 times. It just took a lot. And I say all this to say, as a person who knew she wanted to be an architect since she was 12, it took me 13 years post-graduating from high school to be able to call myself a registered architect. And then also, according to NAB, the investment, right? And the financial investment could cost either between $40,000 to $230,000 to get an education in architecture. And there I am at the bottom again, full disclosure, that I owe $67,000 and I'm on a 30-year repayment plan. And I'm trying to showcase that with this payment plan, and my son, who is 5 years old right now, he will be attending college and I'll still be in my repayment plan, right? And so just studying architecture between the time and the financial commitment is a position of privilege, right? And just kind of understanding that and recognizing that when we think about and talk about how do we make this profession more equitable and just. And when we graduate, we are making, if we're lucky, between $45,000 to $50,000, depending on where in the country you are, as well as how the market is doing. When you compare that to other professions that are equitable in terms of duration of education and licensure and that whole process, who are making almost double that. So we need to just understand the kind of commitments and the investments that we're making there. And so when we talk about how do we introduce architecture to communities of color or those who are socioeconomically challenged, it's not that they don't know about architecture, it's that it's a negative conversation, right? Typically, they deal with the construction, the debris, the noise, the rodents, the detours, the inconveniences of construction. And during that process, part of their culture is being erased. And most of the time, when the project is revealed, it's rarely a project that's there to celebrate them. Or it's also a signifier that they can no longer afford to be there. So architecture is the villain. And it's not a misconception. It's an accurate depiction of the relationship we've cultivated as a profession to communities of color and for those who are socioeconomically challenged. And so when we talk about who our clients are, it cannot just be the person who's cutting the check. It has to be everyone impacted by the project. And their voice is not just a matter of considering them, but including them in the process and the engagement part of the way we design and the way we operate. And then also just trying to understand the forces of erasure, right? Why are we not following these footsteps? Even if you take the idea of how slavery is being taught federally, what's required to be in textbooks in terms of educating about our history is crazy. And the language that are used in some of these books that are used nationally call us immigrants rather than slaves, or that we were here, that slaves were brought here to do chores. Or my favorite, a picture of slavery, which is us in our Sunday best having a picnic on the wagon. Now, if we are being educated about slavery in this reductive manner that doesn't really accurately capture the horrific and horrendous nature of what took place, that makes sense in terms of why people don't even understand how the systems are embedded in a way that's continuing to perpetrate these injustices throughout our daily lives now. And if we take it into the erasure in the field of architecture, I'll give you a great example. Architect Magazine during conference had this wonderful panel, 5 individuals here on the center of your screen there. And when this 45-minute video was released online later on, Justin Garrett Moore, the brother in the center with the pink shirt, was completely edited out the entire conversation. And the only time you saw him is his profile shadow there when they zoomed into another speaker. And of course, he reached out to find out what's happening, and it crickets. And then 2020 happened, and everybody started to kind of remember things that they have been doing. And so Architect Magazine released this article called The Erasure of Justin Garrett Moore, but then spoke to it like a complete lapse of judgment. Stop it. It wasn't a lapse of judgment. That was a directive. No, everyone on this call here who's ever photoshopped a hair out of place understand how intensive that could be, let alone cut out an entire person's existence on a stage from a 45-minute panel. Their responses, their points of view, views of them completely edited out. And they didn't claim the responsibility for that work. And if that's the case, then you're not actually getting at the system that made this happen. Who told whoever to make this happen? Many eyes had to see him get clipped out. So this is something that I'm highly upset about, and I want to see kind of repaired. And then also in May of 2020, they did another great article featuring 4 really important professionals, 3 women and 1 Black man. And when it went to print, who fell off the page? Again, Stephen Gray. And so if you have the physical version of the magazine, you see him edited. If you go on the digital version, the photograph has been put back. But again, this force of erasure is critical because it's not just a matter of me saying, oh, I just have to find you all and elevate you all and everybody will sing and will be so excited. I also at the same time have to fight this force of erasure. And what I'm saying in this moment is that I need your help in helping me fight. And so currently there are 115,000 architects in the United States. About 2,000 are African-American, 532 are African-American women. I am the 315th living African-American woman in the US. I'm the 20th African-American woman to be elevated to the College of Fellows. I'm the youngest African-American to ever be elevated to College of Fellows in the organization's 164 years legacy. And lastly, I'm the 5th woman to be president of the NOMA in its 50 years. So I say all this to say that I am here, we are here, we are strong, we're collective, doing great and important work. And although our numbers are few, being participating in these organizations like AIA and NOMA has allowed me to connect to this collective, to this coalition of women and people of color and all these parts of the profession that similarly has been buried. I've been able to connect and know a lot of them through these experiences. I also try to be as visible to the community as possible, not just the profession, but the community at large, where I participate in parades, I protest, and I try to represent the profession as much as I can and share my story and be unapologetic about it. I make room for our experiences. Those are the 2 titles of our panel discussions that we submitted for A18. Those are our beautiful and amazing speakers who participated, and the rooms were full. And we also created lecture series, the J. Max Bond lecture series with our local AIA New York chapter, which allows us to, again, maintain the legacy of an important and prolific architect that had changed our city and our state and our profession in many ways, and having lecture series annually speak to who he is, his work, and having speakers speak about those same values and ethoses. So if you can identify a woman and a person of color of your local community, it'd be great to create a lecture series that's embodied of that person's work as well. I also protect our history. I find the time, I do. So when articles are being published with the wrong words or the wrong images or the wrong names, I mark it up, I make it graphic, and I make it a point to ask them to hold accountability. And not just for the point of yelling for the sake of yelling or for the sake of likes, but also then requiring or requesting a relationship with those publications. So now the historian seat of NOMA has a relationship with NCARB, where we are able to provide content and information to help create moments of documentation of stories that we want to hear and learn about outside of February for Black History Month, and outside of March for Women's Month, and outside of October for whatever month. Like, is enough with the months. Every day, every week of the year requires great stories. And now with that relationship, we're able to kind of cultivate that together. I also created this new initiative called Say It With Me, Say It With Media, where I want all this work, all this information that we've gathered so far, these 669 identities of these incredible people, how do we continue to elevate them up? And so I have this commitment portal on the website where I'm asking the media publications to sign in, sign their names, what type of publication they are, and the mission of their publication, and commit to doing a few things. The first is reporting the percentage of women and people of color featured in their publication annually, and increasing that amount by 5% until a minimum of 15% is reached. Pledge to call us great, right? Google said you don't call us great, so call us great. And if you don't use the G word, fine. Whatever comparable vernacular that is leveraged and used to describe our white male counterparts, bring that same energy and those same words when describing women and people of color and BIPOC designers. Also, this exhibition kind of series is a kind of self-submitting process. So it's capturing contemporary, currently practicing designers, which is important. But we've also been here doing incredible work. So leveraging their resources to do historical content and get that out in information as well. And then lastly, pledge to use their platform to just explain and educate about how the architecture and the built environment has been used in the past to facilitate racism, sexism, and pain, and how we can start solving it. And so what you see on the screen here are these 6 incredible publications who've signed on to the pledge so far, and all 6 of them together create a 238,000 monthly impressions of their work. And so as you can tell, I'm really adamant and important about this work. I really would love you all to go onto the website, Say It With Media, and be able to click. I have thumbnails for every single major publication in architecture and design with an autofill email that says exactly what you need to say, and the monthly impressions of all those publications, so that you can also encourage them to participate. They've already heard from me. They already know what I said about this, right? And so now I need the network to call them and to email them and say, hey, I too think it's important that you sign on to this pledge. Why haven't you? I'll renew my membership or my subscription if you do, et cetera, et cetera. So please, Say With Me Media. Architecture as advocates, it's not just a matter of the justice work that we're doing in our profession, but it's also the products that we're creating. And so before I can talk to you about architecture that heals, I can talk to you about how architecture can also be used to harm as well. So when you think about Robert Moses, while he was developing and the Jones Beach component, I didn't realize that he was such a racist and actually did not like the undesirables, which is not just people of color, but any immigrant as well. He recognized that most of our methods of transportation was actually mass transit, i.e. buses. So he mandated the 20+ overpass bridges of the Southern State Parkway to be constructed 9 feet or shorter so that buses couldn't get through, right? So this is how he immortalized his racist ideals and thoughts and manifested it into the built environment, right? And this is still part of the fabric of our day-to-day now. So again, thinking about and understanding that there's things like this all over in all types of architectural typologies that speak those same languages and those same values through it. There's development that have market rate entrances versus affordable housing entrances, which is the equivalent of whites only and coloreds only entrances. There's gentrification, redlining. There's so many ways where the built environment has been used to oppress, right? And then there's projects like the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which I affectionately call the Lynching Museum, that received so much opposition for it being constructed because it was saying, people were saying, why would we want a structure that would speak to such a dark and negative past? First of all, if we see how people are playing around with the textbooks, we understand the requirement and the necessity of architecture telling the story, right? And if you're very upset, viscerally upset about pieces of metal hanging from the ceiling, I need you to bring that same energy when Black and brown bodies are being killed in the streets. And if you want an example of a lynching in terms of hanging, I'll give you an example. In 2017, an 8-year-old in New Hampshire was hung by some high school students in front of his 11-year-old sister. And fortunate for us, their noose tying game wasn't the best, so it unraveled and he was able to fall and survive. But I'll never forget the imagery of this baby's neck with these rope burns, at the same time hearing law enforcement say that they would not be pressing charges because these kids were, air quote, good kids, right? And so when we talk about justice, injustice, we need to recognize that it's architecture's role in keeping that history and that legacy as well. There's projects like the National Museum of the African American History and Culture, which was actually originally requested since 1915. And then they were told that African Americans had not significantly contributed to society that would warrant a museum on the mall. So this project in itself is a 100-year advocacy effort, and it is the place that is the testimony that we have contributed. It is now also a safe space for our artifacts and our memorabilia that speaks to our legacy. And it's a space that really is a place that is emblematic of great talent, of diverse talent as well. I try to embed our heroes in our built environments, like J. Max Bond Jr. We were able to rename West 162nd Street J. Max Bond Jr. Way. So again, if there's an important figure in your community, I highly recommend that you start that process. The African Burial Ground National Monument was the very first project that I ever worked on as an intern while working at Aris Architects under the tutelage of Rodney Leon and Nicole Holland Dennis. There they found 419 Africans and over 500 artifacts that really speaks to on the site. And what we learned in this process is that our site that has the 419, actually there's the full extent of the burial ground is an estimated 20,000 African remains. And so what we have inscribed on the side of the chamber here is the full map and the footprint of all the buildings that were built and constructed on top of them. Federal buildings, City Hall, where everybody gets married at, is literally built on the backs and the bones of our ancestors. And so this little piece of architecture claims that history and educates about that at the same time. I'm also an advocate for environmental justice. This is the highest performing speculative office building in all of New England, 888 Boylston, where we leverage both passive and active sustainable strategies. And this is a project that I was able to do in my previous life at FX Collaborative, and really proud about the envelope about sustainability that we were able to push with this project. Bronx Point is a 542 affordable housing project with the first ever brick and mortar hip hop museum, community spaces, waterfront access, esplanades, plazas, gardens and spaces, courtyards. And really, again, and this is in my previous office, where we were able to kind of really create a project that was for the people, embedding the culture of the people, because the concept of the project is hip hop, and really celebrating the local identities into the built environment, into the space. So I hope Naveed Makami is really excited, and as he sees the projects being constructed, he's the architect and designer who passed away during this process, but very much I see the legacy of his thoughts and his values manifested here as well. And then the Cleveland Foundation headquarters, this is a project that really the client even said, this is the square footage that we need for us to function. And here's almost double the amount of square footage that we're offering to the community, where we want to make the ground floor as porous and as accessible as possible, where we become a resource. So it's not just a matter of, I'm going to do a community meeting. It's about creating spaces within your architectural experiences that allow for the community to leverage and cultivate. So at the bottom of the center of the screen there, all those yellow spaces are community-centered spaces that they have access to, whether or not you have business in the Cleveland Foundation headquarters specifically, but that resource, that project becomes the kneel, the breading, and the integration of the community into those spaces. And my goal there is to continue to replace oppressive monuments with those of our great leaders in community spaces. That used to get a giggle back in the day, but now I think people are starting to really hear what I'm saying. And one of my favorite examples is on the lower left-hand side of the screen, where in New Orleans, they removed a statue and replaced it with a Mardi Gras costume with the words, "The people are king." How dope is that? So again, reclaiming spaces and making those spaces about community, about people, about culture, rather than people who are fighting vehemently to maintain you in shackles and in chains. Lastly, architects as activists. I'm going to speak a little fast now because I'm figuring I'm going a little slow. Here, I want to just introduce you to just amazing architects and designers who are doing incredible advocacy work. And so if you're not all about exhibitions, that's cool. These are other ones that you can totally get into and participate in, especially globally now with the pandemic. A lot of us have now virtual components. So Beverly Willis Architecture Foundation, built by women. She really pushes for women issues and does exhibitions also elevating the work and contributions of women. Robert Nichols, he's incredible. He's with the World Deaf Architecture Components, and he's really trying to fight for make the built environment and the profession more equitable and just for those with disabilities. And it's not something that I'm plagued with, but I see very big power and value in what he's bringing to the table and what he's offering. And if you can support his mission in any way, including helping get certain bylaws and such passed through AIA, please support him in that mission. We also have the National Organization of Minority Architects, NOMA. Again, we are constantly growing. We just hit 3,000 members in our 50th year. And this is a really important organization who has always been fighting for justice. This is not new for us. This is what we've been doing. So if you want to participate, we have chapters all over. Please participate as much as you can and participate in the Project Pipeline camps. The AIA New York, together, I was part of the team that helped pen the Criminal Justice Facility Statement, where we're calling architects to no longer design unjust, cruel, harmful spaces of incarceration, and instead lean into restorative justice projects and alternatives to imprisonment. And I say all this to say that it's not one person, it takes a collective and a community, and this is part of the reason why it's important that we get involved in board positions to have these kind of discussions. And I'm hoping that this is also catalytic for AIA New York to do this kind of statement, but also other institutions, other AIA chapters, again, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, to put out a similar statement. And you can find it online, completely accessible for you to take a look. Project Pipeline camps have now become virtual as well, in person, but there's a virtual component. So if you want to participate and inspire young minds, this is also a really great platform. This was the program that I was telling you about in the beginning that kind of inspired the Google search to see what happens when they looked into architecture. Tiffany Brown, 400 Forward, where she's really pushing for mentoring. Instead of like a camp with like 1,000 kids, she takes care of a handful of kids every year, taking construction sites, lectures, write their recommendation letters, help them pick which architecture school they want to go to, help with their financial aid packages, get sponsorships, scholarships, etc., and really have a personal touch in pushing the next series of Black women architects into the profession, which I think is hella amazing. Brian Lee, Design Justice out in New Orleans, where he pushed the Design as Protest national movement, where he talks about us as architects have more to offer than just projects of the built environment, but it's also the community engagement aspects of it. And having these community meetings where we just ask community members, what are the issues that are plaguing your community, whether it's architectural related or not, and we leverage our problem solving skills, our critical thinking skills, and use that as being part of the nature of the relationship of that community. And it's not a one time and we leave you alone forever and ever. It's a continued cultivated relationship that we develop. And then you have Mike Ford with the Hip Hop Architecture Camp. He has been the most successful in terms of breaking out of the architecture bubble and really starting to leverage that, where he's able to have these camps where he has kids design cities based on hip hop lyrics. And then when he's done, he has these kids paired with a local celebrity musician to talk about and make a song about how they're going to use architecture to solve their community issues. So for the one that I was able to participate in the Bronx, the kids talked about using architecture to solve teen pregnancy and drug addiction. And I am working on the See It Loud augmented reality app and camp. It kind of functions like a Pokemon Go, if you will, where you get close to one of the projects, again, submitted for a Say It Loud. It lets you know you're near a project designed by a woman and person of color. You're able to get close and see the names and faces of those who designed the project, as well as an opportunity to create art inspired by what you see, capture it on your mobile device, and see it on the building at 1-to-1 scale. So we're really educating and empowering through design and augmented reality. So excited to get that launched again once you kind of clear COVID and all the kind of constraints of being careful about gathering, especially with young kids. So the main Beyond the Built Environment initiatives are the See It Loud augmented reality app and camp, which we just talked about, which is more geared towards preteens and teens. The Say It Loud exhibitions, which is more for professionals and students. And then the Learn Out Loud children's pop-up book, which is really about the smaller kids. And the idea is to create a series of initiatives that supports the full pipeline of what architecture and how we can make it a more equitable and just component. So I'll leave you with this. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at the time of challenge and controversy. Many, many moons ago, I was asked to stand, and I've been standing and fighting for justice ever since. And I truly hope in this moment you stand and are inspired to stand with me. Thank you. Oh, did that work? So, I really hope you enjoyed the lecture and the conversation. And I wanted to just say one more time, congratulations to all the newly licensed architects of South Carolina. I am so proud of you for the work and the effort, and it's absolutely critical. And for anybody who's struggling through the licensure process, you have a community and a collective of people who are cheering you on and resources to help you get there. So if you need help, just let us know. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention and for this incredible opportunity.